there's been a few trends that have been amplified in the last couple of years by the pandemic, but very specifically to transition business experiences much more towards consumer experiences. And if you think about a consumer buying experience, and then you think as a business, what are the differences? Well, first of all, let's start with what the similarities are. Everybody who's making a buying decision is a person. They're all humans. So they're making the same sorts of judgment calls, and they're building that trust that we just heard about, and they are making the same sorts of personal decisions, even in the context of their business. But what do you think the two big differences are between business buying decisions and consumer buying decisions? The two major ones. There's probably 100. Budgets, certainly, proportionally. Multiple voices. Usually when people are making buying decisions for themselves, it's one person or maybe a couple of people in the family. In businesses, the average has now gone up to about 12 different people involved in a buying decision. What's the one other thing that businesses, that people make that are different buying decisions or that are influencing different buying decisions when they're in businesses? The answer is complexity. Most of the time, the things we buy for ourselves are much more simple, and the things that businesses buy tend to be much more complex. So what have businesses done to make this experience better? They've put salespeople and marketers in front of the customers, and they've given them messages. And they've said, let me give you this PowerPoint presentation. Let me show you this video. Why don't you go to this website and look through those 400 pages of product features and functions? Right? When you're doing buying decision-making for yourself as a person, what do you typically do? Do you typically first go to the Best Buy salesperson, or do you use a website first and go and do research on your own? You're usually doing the research on your own. That's how business decision makers want to buy as well. It turns out that most business decision makers want actually to get to about 80%, 75% of the process before they have to talk to a human, because they consider talking to a human to be a necessary evil in the process. Why? Because those people have been so in their face with the messages they want you to hear. So what has to happen is we have to transform that experience. And it turns out that the way we do things by telling you what the message is as a business buyer and telling you what the sales pitch is, what happens is people forget. Harvard did a great study where they found out that people don't remember a sales pitch. They don't remember the information in a sales pitch. They measured an hour after the sales pitch and 24 hours. What do you think the percentage retention was after 1 hour after a sales pitch? Percentage. 30%. You're high, but that was a good guess. 23% after an hour. So here you have all of these great high-paid salespeople making these wonderful pitches that they spent hours and hours doing PowerPoints on, and people are remembering 23% an hour later. What do you think it was 24 hours later? Less than 5%. Right? So that's kind of a waste of time. Yale did a study to top Harvard because there's a little rivalry there, and they said, why? Why is it that people don't remember? And the reason is they never learned it in the first place. They did a cognitive brain study in figuring out what the neural connections are. And when you remember things, it's because you made strong neural connections. It's because when you get a sales presentation, you never actually learn the information properly. And the reason for that is there's 3 dimensions of engagement that have to happen for you to learn something. The first one, and this is what everybody focuses on, is the intellectual knowledge transfer dimension. I'm going to tell you something I want you to know. I think it's really important, and it's very detailed and complex, so bear with me while I go through these 128 slides. And I'm going to give you all of the intellectual knowledge, which some of it you might actually want to know, but what you might want to know is only on page 72, so the first 71 pages turn you off. Right? So intellectual knowledge transfer is the one dimension. The second dimension, which is very important to knowledge retention and memory, is multi-sensory engagement. That means if you're just sitting here listening to me, I'm going to have to come down later and wake you up. Right? Multi-sensory engagement, because your brain actually gets these neural connections activated when it is impacted by multiple senses, that is touch, hearing, listening, talking, doing. So active involvement is key to learning. I'm sure that our previous speaker would agree with that. Active involvement is key to learning. What do you think the third dimension is? We've got intellectual knowledge transfer, multi-sensory engagement. And what do you think the third dimension is? Emotions. Exactly. What do you think you don't get from a sales presentation when you're sitting listening to it? An emotional connection, right? So the way we have to transform customer buying experiences for business to business is we have to first recognize that in every domain, whether it's online or offline or hybrid, we have to have those three key touch points. Intellectual knowledge transfer, multi-sensory engagement, and emotional connection. You have to be connected somehow emotionally. And then the second thing we have to recognize is that it needs to be mainly digital. Customers want to buy mainly digitally. And in fact, a recent study by Gartner showed that when a business is evaluating different vendors, they only spend about 17% of the time with those vendors. And on average, they're evaluating 3 vendors. So you get about 5% of their buying time. So if you're thinking about that, what's actually happening is you have a very short period of time. What do you have to do? You have to build digital touch points that deliver those things. And the way to do that is to create multi-sensory experiences that engage customers wherever they are. And that's really the key to being able to deliver those personal buying experiences in the B2B domain. It's providing multiple layers of knowledge transfer to the right people. Remember those 12 different people? They all are interested in different things. If you're selling, let's say, a piece of imaging equipment to a hospital, there's 12 different buyers involved. Some of them are interested in throughput. Others are interested in quality of the images. Others are interested in ease of use of the way that that machine works. Others are interested in the facility itself and how much energy it uses and how much resources it uses. So there's multiple dimensions. And each one of them has to have their own journey. And those journeys are nonlinear. That is to say, if you go to a website, you're bouncing around to the things that you're interested in. You're not following the path they tell you to follow. Most websites have a path. They say, go here, then go there, then go there, then go there. But you're a rebel. You don't do that. Nobody does that. You do based on you follow the path that's based on your interest level, and that's exactly how B2B buyers buy as well. And so what ends up happening is you have to create a story. And one of the things that we need to do in the customer experience for businesses is we have to be able to create these multi-layered stories where the customer can relate to the story you're telling. So when you tell a story about somebody or some company like theirs, they relate to it, they form an emotional connection. Then they'll say, hey, there's something over there that's very interesting to me, I'd like to learn more. They click on that or they open it up, they dive in, multi-sensory input. They've actually learned more. And now that intellectual engagement happens. Then they get the product details they want, and then they come back later and they share that with other members of their team, and they say, you ought to go and see that thing that I just experienced. It had a whole variety of stories based on who your different constituents were in the buying process, and other people start getting involved. And now they start talking to each other, and they're building a consensus emotional commitment. But they're doing it at their own pace, and they're navigating in their own way, at whatever level of detail is important to them. So what we've learned is that creating a great customer experience is not about telling them what we want them to hear. It's about giving them that multi-sensory intellectual knowledge transfer with an emotional connection. And that emotion, by the way, can be any kind of emotion. It can be fear of missing out. That's an emotional connection too. When they see what their competitors are doing, that can drive their behavior too. So long as there's some sort of emotional connection, they will remember, just like Maya Angelou said. They will remember how you made them feel. You might make them feel anxious to do something. You might make them feel uncomfortable with their status quo, so long as you make them feel something. And so what we need to do is we need to create these immersive experiences that give wonderful ways for people to explore on their own the kinds of stories and information that they need so that they can make better buying decisions. This means that we have to be confident that what we think our value propositions are actually true, because we're actually turning control over to them. We're turning the control of the buying process over to our customers, and that's one of the reasons why you get lots of resistance from sales and marketing teams when they're thinking about this customer experience, is because they want to control the process. I want to be able to say what I need to say in the order that I need to say it. And then what ends up happening is the customer tunes out because they didn't hear it early enough, or they tune out because they've heard what they need to hear, and then the next 128 slides are not relevant to them. So what we have to figure out is how to create these engaging experiences where the customers are going to be able to make the best buying decisions on their own in this digital format. And we can do it online, and we can even do it offline. You can have a physical encounter and still have digital experiences that give people the ability to engage at their own pace. So a quick quiz. What are the 3 dimensions of engagement that we need for customer experiences? The first one? Intellectual knowledge transfer. What's the second one? Multi-sensory engagement. And the third one? Emotional connection. The fact that you actually said those and you had to participate means you're going to remember them, or at least remember them better than if I had them on a slide presentation. The key here is for us to actually trust ourselves that we have the best solutions for those customers and let them make the right buying decision. They're going to come to us when it's right for them. You never go into a Best Buy store because they call you up and say, hey, it's Saturday morning, time to come in and buy something. You go in when it's time for you to explore what you need from them at that time. And that's how businesses make buying decisions, and that's how we need to facilitate that. So our role in customer experience is to facilitate the customer having control over their own decisions and trusting that because we have the right solutions for the right set of markets and subsegments, they're going to come to the right buying decisions. Thank you.